Welcome. I'm Kristen Stahauer, Academic Vice President and Provost at Northwood University, and we're so pleased you've joined us for a conversation about the book by Arthur C. Brooks, a New York Times best-selling author, called Love Your Enemies. And in fact, this is part of our OmniQuest program, a program that's been around for over 30 years, in which we exemplify lifelong learning at Northwood University, where our faculty, students, staff, and even alumni identify a book and discuss it and learn from it throughout the course of our academic year. And I'm very pleased that we have to join us for this conversation today our faculty members, Dr. Dale Matchek, Department Chair of Economics, Todd Brundrett, Professor in our Operations and Supply Chain Management program, and Dr. Lisa Bacon, our Healthcare Management Department Chair. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Such a timely topic, and in fact, our culture has really shifted, as Dr. Brooks notes, to a culture of contempt, where it's really been harmful for both individuals and our society. And in fact, at the beginning of his book, he mentions, he kind of has a provocative question: to get ahead, you have to be a jerk, right? And in fact, he takes a polar opposite view to that, and he disagrees with that. And in fact, he decries the fact that many people see that if somebody disagrees with them, that they're their enemies. And in fact, it's simply somebody with whom they disagree and from whom they can learn. So Brooks gives us a challenge to join a counterculture and to subvert the culture of contempt with love and decency. He gives us 5 simple rules, and there are some rules that we're going to be looking at today, and we'd love to hear how you've been using those in your classrooms throughout the course of fall semester and now spring semester. Stand up to the man is rule number 1. Refuse to be used by the powerful. Rule number 2 is escape the bubble. Go where you're not invited and say things people don't expect. Rule 3 is say no to contempt. Treat others with love and respect, even when it's difficult. Rule 4, disagree better. Be part of a healthy competition of ideas. And rule 5, tune out. Disconnect more from unproductive debates. So pleased that Dr. Brooks will be joining us on March 17th at Reitma Arena at Northwood University's campus, and we hope you'll join us. Please mark your calendars. We'll give you a little more information at the end of the show about that. But first, I'd like to turn to Dr. Matchek. Dale, if you could share with us what resonated particularly about disagree better, rule number 4, with the committee, and how did that lead to your recommendation for this as our OmniQuest selection for 2022?
Well, OmniQuest is always a big event at Northwood, and we've had some books in recent years that generate a lot of conversation, and in the course of that conversation, it became clear that we could use a few rules on how to disagree better. And so when this book came to our attention, it was certainly one that we wanted to consider as a candidate. And the committee read the book. It resonated with them. We thought this was something not only we could use, but our students could really use. And we all detect the increasing polarization that's going on. And we thought this book could provide a good antidote to that. So in my class, I teach economics, and we talk about free enterprise, and one of the key components of the free enterprise system is competition. And when some people think about competition, it's all about winning. But we know, and this is what we teach, a market economy doesn't work when it's a win at all cost. Competition needs to be fair. It needs to follow certain rules. And when that happens, companies can only win by being better, by improving, by learning from their competitors. Some people call it co-opetition. And it's a pretty easy jump from there to go to how we personally can benefit from people that have different ideas from us. And we don't want to be like one of those unethical companies that tries to, put them out of business or, just shut them out. We actually embrace the challenge. We actually want to hear their ideas because they're different, and not for the sake of winning, but for the sake of improving our own ideas.
That's really where true learning happens, isn't it?
Yeah, we should be doing it all the time. But there's this tendency, we don't like competition. It makes us uncomfortable. And so we have a tendency not to think of our competitor as somebody who's benefiting us, but as somebody who's threatening us. That's not the right way to look at competition. Arthur Brooks talks about it in his book. Our competition is something that we want and should embrace, and we should actually think about it as a kind of partnership.
Wow, that's really inspiring. And Todd, now you teach operations and supply chain management. How have you brought that into your, I know you have a very experiential learning classroom, so how did you bring that into our students' experiential learning in operations and supply chain?
Well, fall semester 2021, Operations 4200, which is our Lean Six Sigma course for our operations and supply chain management students, we were doing two things in the classroom that day. One, we were doing a hands-on activity where they had to improve a production process, and we had a topic in Lean called Respect for People at the same time. So just a little bit of a background. At the core of Lean is this tenet called Respect for People, because people are part of a business process, and if you're trying to make a business process more efficient, trying to make it better, you have to include the people in it because they're the ones part of the process, so you have to show respect. So anyway, here's the activity. So in the class we had teams, and they're trying to make a production process better. So I told the students, I want you to insult each other, right? Just heckle each other, criticize each other, right? So they did, right? And they were at it for a good 5 or 10 minutes, just insulting each other left and right on what they were trying to improve. So then we stopped it and we flipped it. This time we started to discuss the data, the information, the facts, the outcomes, that type of thing. So then the dialogue happened, and then they were disagreeing better, right, than just the insults. So of course at the end of class we had a debrief session, and all of us, we came to the conclusion that, you know, insulting somebody's character is counterproductive, right? If you want to make something better, if you want to make something more productive, more efficient, be transparent with the information, right? Be transparent with the way you collect the data, the way you present the data, the way you talk with people. And that respect that you're showing just by being that transparent goes a long way. And it helps build the relationships, and it helps production processes get better, and it builds that respect for people. So bottom line, respect for people comes from being honest about the information that you're presenting, and then you can discuss it, right, in a very civil way. So it was cool. It got loud, it got boisterous, but we all got the point, and it's very consistent with Dr. Brooks's message.
Sounds like a lesson our students won't forget and will be able to take with them into the workplace as well.
Definitely, definitely.
Now, Lisa, you are in the healthcare management area, and it really strikes me that that point that Dr. Brooks makes about tuning out from unproductive dialogue and debate even ties to our own well-being. Mm-hmm. Could you speak to how that has, you've been able to bring that into your classroom and what that means to you?
Sure. So with the competition of ideas, we know we have competition of ideas. We know that there's sharing of ideas, but that doesn't mean that those sharing of ideas has to come from media, from social media, from counterproductive areas. We know there's a lot of areas that we can find good information, and that we need to try to stay away from those siloed, ideologically siloed places, right, where we're only feeding our own ideas. We need to be able to get ideas from other places that are maybe opposite of our ideas. So Arthur Brooks suggests that we kind of try to find some areas that are ideologically different than ours, and that we can try to focus on understanding where people are coming from. We can't assume we know what they're talking about. We can't assume that where they're coming from. So we have to be able to listen to some different ideas, and that doesn't necessarily mean it comes from social media. Sometimes social media can be counterproductive when we're spending too much time into social media. So Arthur Brooks actually suggests that maybe, possibly, we only spend a couple minutes a day in social media, that maybe we stop following those curated feeds that are given to us and stop following some of those public figures who are just stirring up contempt and trying to get us going and trying to get us irritated and agitated. So some of the things that are suggested is that maybe we just tune out of politics for a little while and take like a political cleanse, right? So if we have this political cleanse where maybe for a couple weeks, maybe on your next vacation, you don't think about politics, right? You don't talk about politics. And sometimes by having that step back from politics, we can realize, right, that the world isn't going to end. The bad people aren't going to take over. And we can kind of see basically kind of three things that he points out. Number one is that we can see politics sometimes is just like a soap opera, right? You tune out for a couple of weeks, you come back, the plot's still the same. It's pretty easy to follow. You still know what's going on, and those kinds of things. And the second thing he points out is that sometimes we have to discuss things from a different perspective and see things for what they are, right? Sometimes we can see that those people who are just trying to wind us up, keep us distracted, Arthur Brooks suggests that maybe they're just doing that for their profit, right? And they're trying to distract us from really what's going on and what we should be paying attention to, those more healthy types of opportunities of conversation, right? And the third thing that he suggests is that we, like any reformed addict, that we realize that when we were spending so much time on social media, we were neglecting the people that we care about. We were neglecting the things we enjoy doing. And when we can step back and see that, it's a whole lot easier for us to be able to understand that maybe we weren't as happy as what we could be when we're engaging in some of these activities that just get us wound up, right? So if we step back from that, that will be healthier for us, healthier for our country, and it'll help get some of those siloed ideologies back out of our conversations and put people back into it, right? Like Todd said, with respect. And how do we bring that respect back to people? And that's one of the ways we can do that.
Great. So the political cleanse,
Yes.
I've heard others refer to it as a news fast, and
Yep.
that can be a good break from some of these negative dynamics and give us a chance to regroup. So back to you, Dale. What other points have you taken away, either personally or into your classroom from this book?
Well, I mean, you can take any of the chapters and relate it to something that's going on in economics, but there's a class of problems in economics called collective action problems, where people pursuing their own interests sometimes end up at a place which is not so great for the group. And so he applies this to our culture today and how we are, as a culture, at a point where none of us actually really wants it to be. And where did that come from? It comes from each one of our own separate decisions to indulge our own, and he calls it a habit or a high, a drug. We have a strong opinion. We love to get it confirmed. So we go to the person who's going to make our enemies look idiotic and going to make us look so wise. And we enable them, and we create, media personalities out of them. And we click on YouTube videos that say, watch Mr. So-and-so destroy Congressman so-and-so. And he says, yeah, each little bit of, buzz that you get from that is coming at the expense of our culture. He says, you've got to, I don't want to say just say no, but that's kind of what it sounds like. You've got to recognize that you are being used, to emphasize what Lisa said, you're being used by these people the way that a pusher would use a junkie. And he says, just don't. And all the advice that Lisa gave about how to resist that and overcome that, but it starts with just an awareness that if you want the better culture, you have got to change the way that you are engaging in it.
Just take a simple step toward the positive culture we want to create. So Todd, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on escaping escaping the bubble, and the rule that Dr. Brooks gives us about going where you're not expected and saying things that you're not expected to say.
Okay. Well, it's such a cool topic in this book, for number one. A very critical part is what he discusses about this culture of contempt, right? Where we've become so polarized as a society, an us versus them type of mentality. You know, you're either, you're far to the left or you're far to the right politically, and if you don't agree with me, then you're not my friend anymore. You know, I'm going to disown you. I'm going to devalue you as a human being type of thing. And a lot of it, and you can see it, in our culture, in our media culture these days, right? If you turn on CNN, okay, they bring on panelists that agree with the narrative that they want to talk about, right? And, it tends to be more to the left. Okay? Fox News does the same thing, right? So they present the news in such a way where they bring on panelists to agree with the right narrative, right? And there's no counter argument, right? It's either one way or the next or the other, right? It's an us versus them. So what's really cool about Dr. Brooks's approach, he said, look at them all. Spend some time watching CNN. Spend some time watching Fox and Friends. Spend time reading the Washington Post and then the Wall Street Journal. Get both sides of the equation, so to speak, right? But then he goes a step further. Immerse yourself, break the bubble, so to speak. Immerse yourself in a conversation where you know somebody's going to disagree with you, right? And that's really powerful, because then you are now rehumanizing the person, right? You're not hiding behind a camera or a Twitter account or the internet, right? You're actually talking one-on-one, face-to-face, right? And you start realizing that this person has a story, right? That this person has feelings. And so you start becoming more empathetic, more loving, or understanding, right? Because now you see this person as a person, and you're not just slamming that person on social media, right? So, dive in, right, to that conversation so you can learn to disagree better, right? And that's going to help break that culture of contempt. And he makes a point that it's become so bad that marriages have broken up over it. Friendships have dissolved, right? Brother versus brother, sister versus sister, right? We wind up not talking with each other, but we really need to, right? We really need to. So the point is, face-to-face conversations, agreeing to disagree better, right? Practicing that by putting yourself outside your own bubble and talking with people that you know darn well that's not going to agree with you, right? Challenge yourself to have that conversation and build that rapport, build that relationship. And I'll take it one step further, right? So we all know we're bombarded with different media slants, right? And it's real difficult to determine, which way to go, which news story do you believe, right? Well, I challenge you this, and I come from a family of journalists, okay? My father was a editor of a newspaper, okay, the Herald Palladium in St. Joseph, Michigan. My brother's an investigative journalist, okay? And I was destined down that road as well, becoming a journalist, going into college, right? So we had a lot of interesting dynamics at the dinner table, talking about what's fact, what's not fact, what's opinion, that type of thing, right? And what came out of it was facts need to be identifiable. They need to have a source. They need to be triple verified, right? What do you hear in news media today? Whether you're watching Fox or CNN or what have you, unnamed sources, sources close to the president, anonymous sources, and it's only one source. Is that true journalism? I don't know, but my challenge is find that reporter, right? Whether it's on network TV, if it's on social media, find that reporter or group of reporters that bring in both sides, right? That get named sources, right? That have documents, right? So that way you can make that informed decision. So that way when you're discussing information with people, you have facts in front of you, and then you can bridge that gap where you don't have to hold somebody in contempt anymore. You can actually just discuss the verifiable facts. And that's how we can get to a culture that just throws away contempt and starts building that relationship again.
Thanks, Todd. Really an encouragement to be more discerning consumers of information, and also some important points about how isolating it can be to be living in that culture of contempt. Taking that another step further, Lisa, could you speak to how contempt is never the solution? And that's something that Brooks really advocates for us to do, is to look at things that way.
Yeah. So, like you said, contempt is not healthy for us to be looking at that. And so one of the things that in the book Arthur Brooks talks about is to, when somebody comes to you in contempt, don't respond to that. Just say to them in good humor or in, with some opportunities of getting to know each other a little bit better, right? Don't follow suit. Don't have contempt. Don't do what the other people are doing. One of the things they suggest is, don't mock people. Don't make fun of them. Don't roll your eyes. I work on that one all the time. Don't roll your eyes when you don't agree with somebody, right? Those kinds of things. How do we address the fact that we don't want to join with that contempt? We have to identify it for what it is and be able to step back from that and say, no, that's not where I want to go. I want to be a nicer person. And if other people are watching me be a nicer person, then maybe they'll be a nicer person as well. And so to be that good role model and not to follow suit with that contempt. And that's a very important thing to be able to do. And in the book, all throughout the book, Arthur Brooks throws in stories after stories. And I love the stories that are in there. And one of the things we did in class the other day is we had a whole list of values, all these words, these value words. And I said, okay, choose some words that you truly value. Okay, that's the easy part, right? You value freedom, respect, those kinds of things. But then I want you to write a story that you could share with someone that explains to them why that's your value. Put it into a story. Explain to them. Maybe it's something from your childhood, maybe from high school, maybe from college, right? Share with them these stories because now you're humanizing them. You're putting it back into that human respect, and you're getting rid of that contempt, right? We have to figure out how we can become more communicative, right? You're not going to make somebody understand and agree with you if you're just throwing facts and data and those things. But if you put it into a story and have those facts and those datas that are verifiable, like Todd said, then we can start getting rid of some of that contempt.
Thank you. That's great advice. Any final thoughts as we wrap up this wonderful conversation where you've shared how you brought this into your various disciplines, different kinds of classrooms? I really appreciate that. So final thoughts?
Well, one of the things I like about Brooks, and this is kind of a theme throughout his work, is his focus is on human dignity and what he calls this radical equality of human dignity. Each one of us should be treated with equal dignity. Each one of us is worthy of respect, and there are things that damage that. Sometimes it's the way other people treat us, and sometimes it's the way we feel about ourselves. And when we engage in another person who disagrees with us, and we can show them respect, we are honoring their dignity and validating their equal dignity. Sometimes that's a message to them that they really value. And I know people like that. I'm going to give a shout out to my former colleague, the late Dale Haywood. Always made me feel like I was the most important person in his life, but he made everybody feel like the most important. And Dale Haywood was an ambassador of human dignity, just the way he treated people and showed genuine curiosity. Why do you think that? Even though you know, he might think something entirely different, but he definitely wanted to understand you. And you feel that. And what Arthur Brooks is saying is that something each one of us can aspire to do. Share, confirm another person's dignity, listen to them with respect, and do it sincerely, because you'll find they're interesting. And you might find that in conversations like that, you both are a little better off because of it.
Thank you. It really is enriching to engage in other perspectives. Faculty members, thank you for joining us today and giving our audience a taste of what happens in your classrooms and the transformative learning and experiential learning that you provide. We're thankful for that, and I know our students are as well. So thank you again, faculty, and we hope that you'll join us on March 17th at Reitma Arena in Midland, Michigan, for Arthur C. Brooks giving a keynote address from 6:15 to 7:15, and then he'll be doing a book signing until 9 o'clock. And you can reserve preferred seating on www.northwood.edu, and you can search for the Brooks event. We hope you'll join us, and we hope you'll heed this call to action to renew our nation using these very accessible skills and very practical skills. And we have a call to action from Brooks, and he says, go find someone with whom you disagree, listen thoughtfully, treat him or her with respect and love. The rest will flow naturally from there. So thanks for joining us today, and we hope that you'll join us for our future programming.